So thank you very much for inviting me, and I do have a slide presentation here today. So what I will be doing later on is exporting this as a PDF and passing it along. So hopefully it will also go up on the website, and then that way you won't have to take as many notes while I'm speaking. I tend to be a little bit of a type A personality, so I'm probably going to rattle things off a bit quickly, and if I do, just, if I'm going too fast, just raise your hands and let me know, and I can kind of elucidate a bit on some of the points that I'm going to make. So the way I've broken this down is I am going to give you kind of a bit of an overview on the components of digital marketing. And for me, there are two aspects to that. One is what I would refer to as kind of the high-tech side of things, and the other is the high-touch side of things, and how those both come together. Now, depending on your product, or your project, or your film, or whatever you are producing, you may find that a digital marketing strategy is the way to go, or you may also be looking at something more hybrid. And today I do have two case studies. One was, I would say, more pure play on the digital marketing side, and I'll show you sort of why that one succeeded, and one that was also used digital marketing but probably could have and will in its second season benefit from a more hybrid strategy. So this is me. This is my website, and I'm very much the shoemaker, because I just ripped my site apart to redesign it, and I haven't put it back together again. So, and I'm a bad blogger, and oftentimes I'm working on projects, so I'm a bit inconsistent. So I'm not a good example. So don't follow me. So I did develop a free guide for the Independent Production Fund. It's called How to Build an Audience for Your Web Series. But although it is titled For Your Web Series, it does have a lot of foundational stuff that would apply to basically film, TV product, gaming, or anything that might have an online component. I will be doing a second edition of this, so it will be updated and probably within a month or two. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, because it's been less than a year and it's out of date. So that's the way the web goes. So let's take a look at the marketplace. So we may all be familiar with this scenario that you see in my little image here. This is the type of place I grew up in. We had a television set and everybody crowded around. Well, today, if we think of this same image, we might see everyone with buds in their ears, and maybe somebody with a laptop, somebody with a smartphone and looking, watching stuff on multiple platforms. So we have had, rolling technological change, and it keeps rolling and it keeps moving very fast. And it's not the people moving technology forward are not waiting for any of us. They're just kind of going. We also now see very much changing audience behaviors and attitudes towards content consumption. I think last night, Anne, I was talking to you. You've cut your cable. I've cut my cable. We are expecting to see things in different ways at different times when we want it. When we feel like watching things, we're not tied to the old way of consumption of content. There's huge disruptions taking place from new platforms, including over-the-top services, user-generated content, and many of these other aspects. So things such as Netflix, Hulu, which you may or may not be familiar with, many of the digital platforms, and of course YouTube.
Sorry, is that what you mean by over-the-top?
Yes, Hulu is an over-the-top service. So I'll get in and explain that in a bit more detail shortly. So the marketplace as well that we have to deal with is increasingly fragmented. It's very noisy, it's very crowded, it's very competitive, and there's still the big question, what is the business model? And for many of you, that is the big question until it sort of sorts itself out. So, you know, we are in a time of change right now. We do all have to, you know, do the British thing and keep calm and carry on. But, you know, not to panic, but, you know, things are not the way they used to be, nor will they be the same going forward. The game's changed, and you either have to sort of play within the new sandbox or at least understand it, or you really could be, you know, left out of a significant, you know, source of business income. So there's many, many opportunities at the moment. We are, as I said, in a time of change, and when there is change, there are opportunities. Filmed entertainment is not dying. In fact, it is the fastest growing sector of the global entertainment industry. The new digital content and digital product does allow us to, you know, source a lot of new talent, pilot new series ideas, and also to develop original properties for the web, you know, as a new and auxiliary line of business. Now, with opportunities, there also come challenges. Particularly here in Canada, we don't have a destination platform, nor do we have necessarily buyers for original web properties the way they are right now in the States. So, for example, in the U.S., Hulu is a destination platform, and they are buying original web properties along with YouTube, Amazon, Yahoo, Netflix, and many others. Our financing and distribution is still supporting many traditional models. I won't get into that. I'm sure all of you are well aware of how all of that works. That's not my specialty, but you know, that does play into, you know, part of the challenges we face here. And a huge challenge, of course, is reaching, attracting, and sustaining audiences. So what I wanted to do, just in case not all of you are familiar, is just to take a look at some of the various sort of distribution channels that are now available to us. And because your marketing is so closely tied to distribution online, it's good just to review that. So for people who you know, are still producing film, we do have conventional theatrical, and I'm sure most of you know that scenario where films are screened in conventional theaters and admission is charged. The non-theatrical, where there may be free viewings on school campuses, libraries, or other venues where admissions are not charged. As a filmmaker, you would make a fee on that. Semi-theatrical would be non-conventional venues in which a fee is charged for admission, so that might be, say, a film festival. We also have a new channel, and that's grassroots. And those are films which are screened by individuals and organizations for their community within independent film and certainly within documentary. This is, you know, a new and very vibrant channel. I like to kind of group consumer products and merchandise and all of that as itself in a channel because these are hard products. And again, sources of revenue for you, home video and DVD, although the DVD sales are flat, and I believe the last statistic I saw in the last 2 years, they've actually dropped 300%. So don't invest a lot in DVD. Educational sales, of course, which again, kind of somewhat more related to documentary film. And then, of course, merchandise, and this may be ancillary products, not necessarily the DVD, but T-shirts, books, stickers, from many independent producers, and particularly some within web video content. This actually does kind of provide some extra income for them. Within digital distribution, I kind of put TV and cable into this because it's a pipe. So we all know television and cable. Pay-per-view, video on demand. This is very big in the States. It's very underdeveloped here, but for many filmmakers, really the video on demand strategy is proving to be very successful, where they may be doing theatrical and video on demand back to back or together. Digital includes distribution through various internet channels, and that would include download to own and download to rent. Mobile, again, distribution through mobile channels and apps, and that would also include download to own. We have streaming and over-the-top services, so those would include Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, Amazon Prime, Vudu, many of these in the U.S., but I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Netflix. Aggregators, which would include YouTube, Facebook, MySpace, and then there's many specialty channels, and these would include channels such as Blip, Vice, Machinima, Funny or Die, College Humor. And many of these are now commissioning original content, as are the aggregators, as are the streaming and over-the-top services. And then for often, I think from many independent producers, will have their own proprietary website, and that may be with or without advertising. And typically, generally, many of the people that I work with would have some sort of integrated video player as a way to kind of keep a foot within the large aggregators, as well as maintain their own online presence. So that kind of gives you just a very quick overview of the kind of the very wide space that big sandbox we now have to play in. So traditional marketing, when I studied marketing, it was very much about the 5 Ps, which were product, place, people, price, and promotion. Very much driven by advertising, publicity and PR, and direct mail. It was very much about push. You had a message, the message was pushed out to a mass audience, and it went typically, at the top of the food chain was print, and then TV, and then radio, and community newspapers, and those were the main channels. So traditionally, with marketing as well, it was something that perhaps the broadcaster or the studio did. It had a campaign structure, which meant it had a beginning and an end, and it was usually focused on the launch. and it was focused on reaching as many people as possible. So when I would do marketing campaigns, I would try and structure it to see how wide I could go as well as then how deep I could go. So you really tried to reach everyone. It was expensive in that you did, and it still is in a traditional marketing campaigns, which work very well for Hollywood blockbusters or for sort of the big event television, such as you might find on CBC or CTV. Still having the side of the bus plastered with, your show is still a great way to create awareness and draw audience. So that's kind of traditional marketing. So the new marketing, we're still looking at a mix of people, product, place, and promotion. Price doesn't factor into it as much because often everything is free. But with sort of the new marketing, there's also another layer to it, and that's involved with discovery, experience, and exploration. And that's where your audience comes in because after they have some awareness, they may want to then become much more involved in your project and in sharing your project, exploring your project further, and helping you take your project out to their friends and familiars and influencers. As I mentioned at the top, when we look at the marketing structure now, it is a mix of high tech, which includes a foundation of content, search, social media, and publicity PR. But within that very high-tech structure, you also have a very strong need to be very high-touch. And this would include involving and identifying and knowing communities of interest, having strong stories, participating in events, and developing a much more direct approach, whether that be through social media or email. So those two things come together. They work together to strengthen each other, and you sort of can't do one without the other, nor can you forget sort of the foundations of a digital marketing structure. So often our new reality, your broadcaster or studio may have very limited interest or exposure with your project. Many producers now are responsible for their own marketing, whether or not they want to. Broadcasters, they have limited resources as well, and they tend to put their money on winning horses. And if you're, if you have a product that's not necessarily aimed at a mass audience, you may be left with little or no support. So our new reality is really focused on reaching core groups of people who have already expressed maybe some interest in your topic or your theme, or may have, some personal involvement in it. In a sense, the new marketing reality is cheap in that generally you're not buying advertising. You may not be undertaking sort of large-scale PR campaigns and, rolling things out as traditionally with, a publicist. However, it is expensive in that you really do have to have some great ideas and you have to invest a lot of time. So, with time, you either have to have people on staff that have some savviness with digital media or digital marketing, or that can help consult you and that you can help guide, but it really does eat up huge amounts of time. It's very, very labor intensive. So digital marketing. Digital marketing has 4 aspects. That's content, search, social media, PR, and publicity. I always like to refer to this as sort of the 4 legs on a chair. If you only are doing social media, your chair isn't going to be very stable, and it's probably going to tip over. However, if you do take care of these 4 aspects, then what you should be able to do as a result is get some traffic to your website, and that is the purpose of digital marketing, is mainly to get traffic either to your website or your property, whatever that might be. The other part of that, which might be sort of the back or the big comfy couch part of our chair, is the social marketing side. And that is going out and connecting with communities of interest, developing partnerships, being present at events where you can meet your potential audience, interact with them, or your actors can. And also it has a direct component to that, which I'll explain a bit in more detail later on. This results in audience engagement. This is how we get that feely side of things going. So this does require new skills for a new world, and really what it does require is for people to be more what I would call artistic entrepreneurs. You really do have to feel comfortable with risk, which is not something that, as Canadians, we necessarily have an affinity for. You do have to sort of accept failure and keep going, and you have to be a bit of an idea generator, and you have to keep throwing out those ideas because you just don't know what's going to stick. And oftentimes online, until you actually do it and you're out there and you're participating and you're communicating with people, you don't know whether it's going to work or not. So again, you have to kind of get those ideas out there and keep doing it until something sticks. It also requires you to be very self-directed, self-sufficient, and focused. And I know for myself personally, finding focus in this day and age is very difficult, particularly with everything that's kind of coming at you and the rapidity of it and the major distractions which we have today. But you have to sort of keep your ears open to that, but not be overwhelmed by it, because it's very easy to get sidetracked onto other things. And by being self-sufficient, what I mean there is you really should know how to do things yourself, and or have a team around you that can, cut supplementary content quickly, that can refashion, photos into exposés, that can write quickly, that can do and move and produce a lot of content very quickly and inexpensively. Oftentimes I find, in particular on projects, smaller projects, that you really are your own best marketer. Although my background personally is in public relations and I do act as somewhat still as a spokesperson for people, oftentimes it's much more effective if the director actually picks up the phone or sends the email and, creates a personal connection, particularly when you are trying to develop any kind of online partnerships. Lots of bloggers, they don't want to hear from me in my pitch, but they will be somewhat more receptive to the fellow content creator contacting them. But as a marketer, then you do have to have, again, good ideas, and you do have to have strong communication skills. This isn't necessarily everyone's bailiwick, but hopefully, as you'll see when I kind of run through some of the case studies, that there are ways to kind of determine where you're most comfortable online, in what space, and work that effectively. You don't have to be everywhere. And in fact, it's very unmanageable. So you don't want to be on 20 different social platforms. It's very, very hard to manage, and you really don't want to be online 24 hours a day. You need time to relax your brain, and that's very important, and be thinking creatively, because that's the other part of it, is the ideas part. So, in creating any kind of a marketing plan, you have to be very, very, very focused on what your goals are. And your goals will determine everything, and it will also help you make decisions with regard to your resources. Again, you can't be everywhere, you can't be doing everything, and you certainly won't have the budget to do this, nor will you have the energy. So really knowing what your goals are is very, very important. So some of the questions you may want to ask yourself is, what do I want or need out of this project? You have to really ask these days, how good is the project? Where does it fit within this huge, vast array of content that's out there and available to everyone the world over, and probably the Martians too? Who is that audience? You have to know who your audience is, and you have to be able to not only know them, but be able to speak to them, because you're part of them. And you really have to know what your resources are. So, what do I want? Do I want to make money? If I want to make money, then if you want to make money, then what I suggest you, highly suggest you do, is follow the example of, and I don't know his name, but I know he lives here in Halifax, is the fellow who does Talking Animals. Fabulous. So that type of video content designed for YouTube, that's going to make you money. And you can make that money, and that brand now has, I noticed that the dog was part of one of the Super Bowl, was in a Super Bowl commercial, so congratulations to his agent. It was wonderful. So the dog was seen by, 300 gazillion thousand people watching Super Bowl. If you want to, launch your career, online is a perfect way to do this, and as well to kind of build up a bit of a network. If you want to be famous, go do a vlog. Sit there and talk and be as crazy as you want, and you can probably, develop a great following online and, be a famous YouTube star. There are many now. If you want to have an audience for your work, then online is a great way to do that. And in one of the case studies we'll be looking at shortly, that was the specific goal of the filmmaker that I worked with. Other questions you might want to ask yourself is, if you want to have an impact on the world, or if you do want to build a sustainable career. And many people are doing this by really focusing very much on a niche, developing, and I think particularly within documentary, that they can, develop a very good database, which then they can take from film to film with them, so that, as a result out of your film, if you have 3, 4, 5,000 people in your own personal database that you've accrued from one project, then a similar themed project, instead of starting at 0, you're starting with 5,000 friends. I like that. You really need to know, again, how good your product is. That's creative, technically. You really have to know what makes it different and unique. You have to ask yourself, is the story authentic? Oftentimes where I find the gap is between people who they're speaking to a specific niche audience, and yet they haven't really participated in those online communities, and therefore it's very hard for them to actually reach out and talk to those communities, or creators that do have a specific niche in mind and then kind of hand over that responsibility to a very young intern who then is kind of serving as proxy and can't really mobilize that online community, say, perhaps the same way that the creator might. You have to look for marketing hooks, and also whether you can leverage any stars, and by stars I mean online stars, as well as our traditional sort of what we might consider TV and film stars. There are online stars, and what I am seeing as a strategy that's working very successfully for web content is where people are integrating some of these online stars into their storyline so that they bring their followers with them. So somebody who has a nice thriving little YouTube channel becomes part of the storyline for the web series, or for, say, even into, a TV series that then they're bringing their audience with them. The way the deals are being struck now, particularly with YouTube, Netflix, and Hulu, is that they do want demonstrable audience. So again, they're looking to people who, who are YouTube stars that would have very strong followings with them to, offer them content deals. So you do have to know who your core audience is, and again, as I can't emphasize enough, you do have to have some sort of personal connection to them. I really do find that that works best, and or really ensuring that your team has a good sort of personal, personal connection to that core audience. So for myself, for example, I can talk quite comfortably with, mummies and mummy bloggers because I've been there. But I have a project coming up which is, really aimed at the party crowd, 19 to sort of 22, and I maybe 20 years ago I could talk to those people because I was part of that, but I'm not now. So for me, what I'm doing right now is trying to find someone within that community that I can work with that's going to speak through social media with that authentic voice that those that age group will understand, and with the appropriate language that age group will understand, so that I'm not trying to fake it. Although I have faked it being a tween, although I usually get caught out because I tend to spell things correctly. And you do have to know sort of what the buttons are to push that are going to help bring your viewers kind of from passive watchers into active participants. And I won't get into sort of specifics on that because we'll sort of touch on a few things in the case studies, but it will be very dependent on every project, what those buttons kind of might be. Very important, know what your resources are, and that's time, money, and energy, and you have to make sure that you have a nice balance between each of those. And personally, when I'm advising people, it's, I always harken back to the old adage that of good, cheap, and fast, and you get to pick two, but not all three. So, you might even throw that at a broadcaster sometime. What do you want, this good, cheap, or fast, and maybe you can kind of up your licensing fee or whatever a bit. So I think it's very important not only to have your story, your narrative, or your documentary, or whatever that is, but you also need to kind of be developing sort of your own story or a brand story. And you have to be able to sort of get that out there and wrap that around what you're doing as well. And that can sometimes sort of sustain and bridge those spaces when you don't have, say, fresh content, but you need to kind of keep the conversation going. And in Ruby Sky, when we do that case study, we'll look at that because Jill Golick was very good at kind of doing that and spreading that message out over a sustained period of time. And again, I keep harking back to sort of being able to live your story and having some, kind of emotional resonance with your story so that you can talk to people naturally and freely and connect with them. So our marketing plan. Our marketing plan should be very, very much audience focused. It should be content rich. There needs to be a balance between high tech and high touch. It needs to convert people, and it needs to engage people. So I'm going to go into a few more specifics, but if anybody has any questions at the moment.
You mentioned that you need to have a personal connection to the audience. And this is, what does that, how do you do that on the web? Like, what does that mean, or where are the parameters?
Well, I think the two case studies that I have today, I think, they'll help to define that because, in particularly the film one, the filmmaker was very successful because he knew what his core audience, he'd experienced what his core audience had experienced, so he knew exactly how to talk to them, and they really trusted him because he was very authentic, and they could ask questions, and he would, respond sort of from his kind of deep understanding and knowledge and not from a kind of a marketing perspective. And I think that's always very hard, is trying to kind of drop that tendency to focus on a marketing message. So there's only so many times you can say, come watch my video, it's up now, or come, my TV show's airing tonight, please come watch it. I mean, I see that constantly. If you're following, many of the broadcasters on Twitter, that's their constant message. After a while, you don't hear that anymore because it's just, come watch such and such airing tonight. So having some sort of, personal connection there just allows you to break out of that kind of sole-focused marketing message. So, high tech. So really, high tech's purpose is about getting traffic to your site. So the focus is very much, it's still very search-based, so it's focused on Google, Twitter, and it's focused on social. So, and that means having a presence where your audience socializes and spends time, so whether that's on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, or wherever, any hundreds of thousands of social networking sites where they might be spending time. In the business, we call this inbound marketing. And as I mentioned, it has, there are 4 aspects to inbound marketing, and that is content, search, social media, publicity, and promotion. They all work together. See the guy who's jumping in? That's inbound. He's getting pulled into that website. So content. Content is very important. Content is very key to placing in the search engine results page. Search engines want new stuff, and they want lots of it. They want, so if you do want to get your site kind of well established in search, you need to be posting a lot of content, and that might be video content, it might be written content, it might be pictures, and it all has to be optimized for search. Also, without content, you really don't have anything of value to share with your social media followers, and nothing of value that will bring them back to your site. So, you know, if you're not posting new sites, then what are you going to say other than, my show's airing tonight? Content also keeps audiences interested in coming back, and in the Ruby Sky case study, we'll see how the girls did this very, very smartly, and how they did kind of keep their little core tween audience quite interested in things and coming back. So search people still go to Google to look for stuff, right? They also go to Twitter to look for stuff now. Twitter is a search engine, same way that sort of Google is a search engine. So, you know, we don't want to forget that either. Search really pulls people to your website, and it involves target keywords and phrases that people are using to search topics. So you really have to make sure that you're not sort of pulling those keywords out of your head. Oh, I think maybe my people are searching for refrigerator. Well, no, they're not searching for refrigerator, they're searching for blue fridge. So knowing that will help you tailor your content and make sure that you're using kind of the right words so that people can find you. This also means having a website that's very SEO friendly, and that's quite easy to do today if you are using WordPress. There are some amazing plugins which make doing SEO extremely simple, and there's some fabulous ones, one which is called WordPress SEO, which will actually teach you how to do search as you go along.
Sorry, what's SEO stand for?
Search engine optimization. So it's kind of search engine optimization tends to be a bit of a thing that freaks everybody out, right? I don't know what to do, you know. And they feel they need experts. You don't need experts these days. You need an understanding of sort of how the basics work, and a sort of typically a platform for your website, and I would strongly recommend WordPress, that will allow you to use some of the free plugins that are available that make it, again, very easy to optimize your pages and your posts.
What are some of the other good plugins for optimizing?
There's one other, I can't remember the name off the top, although it might be in my guide, but I really would only recommend, it's the WordPress plugin by Joost, and that's Joost. and I believe that's pronounced Joost. It's my, I love this guy. He's a nice young man out of the Netherlands, and he has built this plugin and shares it for free, and it's really amazing.
Are you familiar with webs.com? And don't like them? It started freewebs.com, and then it's webs.com. You don't?
I don't use any of those, and I'll tell you, we can talk about that maybe afterwards, and I'll tell you why not to. If you have any kind of proprietary, you really want to, if you have any kind of a project, you really want a proprietary website. You don't want to be hosting it on Tumblr. You don't want to be hosting it on sort of necessarily any free sites where your optimization is going to be compromised, and it will be on Tumblr.
Have you heard of like the Tumblr model where you basically you join a group and that message gets spread kind of like as a work chart and goes through all the other blog sites and other Twitter accounts and everything like that?
Is this a paid thing?
No, it's free. You have to be invited to join because you have to be topic specific.
Oh, okay.
And it's one of those things where, if you are blogging specifically the children in health and you get invited to join, you put your little blog up, but then it will actually be distributed to 100,000 people.
So like Blog Her, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's something, a sub-branch of that.
So what's it called?
Tumblr, T-I-M-B-L-R.
I wouldn't use Tumblr. Yeah. The reason I wouldn't use Tumblr's great, but you have to kind of understand who's on Tumblr. And most of the people on Tumblr are between 14 and 18 years of age. Now, if you have a project that's specifically for that audience, then yes, go ahead. But there is one problem with Tumblr in that it does have a very neat feature which allows you to reblog stuff. So if you write something and it can be posted to every other person's blog if they find it interesting too. So of course if there's fan stuff, for example, right now I'm working on My Babysitter's a Vampire, so there's a lot of fan chat around that, and a lot of the kids have Tumblr pages. But the problem is that Google will not index any of the content on Tumblr just because it becomes then duplicate content, and Google does not want to see duplicate content, and it will penalize you for duplicate content. So the only sort of Tumblr pages that will actually end up within Google are ones that are like extremely off the chart, high traffic. So you rarely see a Tumblr page ending up on first or second or even third page results of Google, okay, because they are penalized. But if you're looking for that, it's kind of community in there. Yeah, it's fun, and for it's very easy to use. It's it doesn't take any much skill. So for some people, it's it's good, and it's a what we would call a microblogging site. Yes?
Can I ask you about keywords and how to determine what keywords will bring people to your site?
Can we sort of address that maybe at the end and afterwards? It's a fairly detailed, somewhat detailed explanation. My guide also has a lot of detail on that, which may help, but I can kind of give you a little sort of 5-minute at the end, only because it is fairly specific. So I'm just going to sort of barrel ahead here a little bit. Social media, of course, I think everyone's familiar with it today. It's, the sort of the buzzword on everyone's lips, although I would caution you that this isn't, social media is not a silver bullet. This is why it's sort of part of your package of 4. On its own, it's not going to do, much for you unless you kind of want to, become a Twitter star. However, it is a very good way to pull people to your site, and particularly Facebook. I see a lot of traffic. In fact, Facebook will often be my first referrer of traffic to a website. Twitter is starting to get bigger. There are more people there, but it's a smaller percentage. And again, you need to kind of look at who your audience is, as they may not be using Twitter. There are still a lot of people who are not. There are a lot of people in our business who are. It's a fabulous way. It's a fabulous B2B tool, but you probably just don't necessarily want to be talking to your friends. If you're have any kind of female-focused content right now, I would highly recommend checking out Pinterest. Huge numbers, lots of women in it, and it seems like a very, very dynamic place. And I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of clones of that site that will cater to all kinds of niche product. So it's Pin and Interest together. Very hot. It's gone from nothing to being now one of the top 10 sites on the web. Publicity and PR is still very important, and it helps push people to your website. With publicity and PR, it is used to attract attention, and really you do have to make sure that you're kind of crafting a story around your project that's going to make that project newsworthy. Links from, say, important online publications such as the Globe and Mail also carry a lot of weight in the search engine. So, if you do happen to get something in the Globe and it's got a link to your website, Google goes, "Woo, cool. That must be important." So hopefully once we have all those things kind of working together, you'll be getting traffic to your website or your video or whatever you determine sort of your hub to be. And of that, you'll get a small percentage of that traffic will convert, and how we do want them to convert is either to be signing up for an RSS feed or some kind of a newsletter or update, or in certain cases, they will be buying or downloading, say, a DVD product or making some sort of purchase from you. So the high touch side of thing is all about reaching and engaging people. It's very much, it has its focus on content, social media, and what I like to call outreach. And it really is about developing partnerships with individuals, groups, and communities of interest. Really, I think what you are looking to do with sort of a high-touch approach is you want to find and connect with existing communities so that you're not having to recreate wheels, and you're going to be able to reach people. So if someone is, say, interested in birding and you have a documentary on, birding, obviously being able to sort of hook into those communities, get them excited about your project, get them tweeting, talking about it, sharing with their membership, is a good way to narrow in on your core audience and make that sort of stuff happen. So the partnerships that I look to put together are often subject-specific media, so kind of more of a publicity approach, but those would be, any of the bloggers that are blogging on kind of niche topics. I also heavily look to communities, and those might include fan pages, wikis, or forums. So right now I'm working on a web series called Guidestones, which is very much focused on the conspiracy community, and most of those people are on forums. So part of part of what our social media coordinator does is kind of, hang out there and talk about the end of the world. But very important. Issue-based organizations are good, and particularly, if you are in documentary, although this as well has been used extremely successfully. Well, it has been used extremely well within documentary, and it can be used sometimes within feature as well, and that's really getting, organizations behind your film. And influencers as well, particularly if you are able to, again, as I mentioned, get to develop relationships with what I would call internet stars that can, move a lot of traffic to your site, or specifically very high trafficked or prestigious blogs. I just placed an article on Wired about a week and a half ago. So, when things like that happen, then, you get hockey sticked, and your traffic will go up quickly, and then it's also there for a long time. So hopefully that will help sustain and keep sending traffic. Events include everything from meetups to tweetups within the web series community, and particularly those working in any kind of niche, the geek culture, nerd culture, sci-fi, comedy. They all have conventions right across Canada, U.S., and they're great for meeting people, and as well, you'll consistently see a real uptake in traffic to your website, as well as sales if you are selling things after that. Speaking engagements are also good, and public stunts or any other kind of creative methods that attract media and public attention, and that's sort of a out of the old traditional handbook of PR and publicity. So one of the things that I think people often miss is direct, and there is immense value to be had in building your own network and having your own database. So often when I would start a project, I do ask, okay, producer Jane, how many people do you have on a mailing list? Nobody. Do you have a database of people that you're dealing with? Well, maybe I can export my contact list. So we often have to start with that. But what I would suggest to you is, rather than kind of leaving that haphazardly, that if you are looking to sort of project long term, is try and as you network and as you meet people, and try and formalize your list of contacts somehow. There's lots of easy ways to keep track of people now. If you're on a Mac, Bento is a great little tool, and you can actually put somebody's picture in there so you can remember who they are. But having that, if you are starting some sort of an independent project, if I'm starting with, say, a database of 1,000 names, those are 1,000 people that I have some personal connection with that I can start with, rather than starting from zero, because starting from zero is a lot of work. It's huge work, and having to build up. So again, if you have a list of 1,000, those 1,000 people can be invited to start your Facebook page, or they can be invited to participate with you on Twitter. It's a wonderful place to start. So direct as well, would include some more formal things, as well as sort of informal and microblogging, which we talked about a bit with Tumblr or with Twitter. And that's particularly with Twitter is very much a conversational tool. The way I often explain Twitter to people, it's like going to a nice cocktail party. So It's like if I had showed up last night at the cocktail party going, hey, my TV series is airing tonight, are you going to watch it? I'm sure not too many of you would find me too interesting to talk to. But often people treat Twitter that way, and they just kind of show up and start pushing out their stuff, and it will get ignored. So you want to always remember that every time you're on Twitter, you're at a cocktail party. You want to behave the same way as when you're out in public and talking to people and having fun. So we're going to head into a couple of case studies. How are we doing for time? 3:30? Oh, okay, so I think we'll be okay, and then hopefully there'll be time for me to answer questions. If you do have specific projects that you are working on and you'd like to discuss it with me, I will be here for the rest of the evening. I will be here tomorrow, or you can email me, and I'd be glad to kind of review things with you and perhaps give you some input on ways that you can go. So let's start with this first case study. And this was a documentary film. It was called Vine of the Soul, Encounters with Ayahuasca. So it was a TV-length film. It was financed by Vision Television, and which now is Zoomer TV, I believe. The broadcaster, the Canadian broadcaster, had TV and digital rights for Canada only, and only for a year. The filmmaker had a traditional sales agent in the U.S. and started the project out by kind of going the traditional route of film festivals and working through his agent in the States, Louise Rosen, who's very well respected and well known. Only none of that sort of materialized. There were no sales in the States, no sales to other broadcasters. So I met up with him, and really what he wanted to do was to reach a larger audience than his one-time window allowed, and it was really only a one-time window. It was being broadcast once on Vision, and then kind of carried on their site, but it was a bit hard to find on the site. And he felt that there was a much larger audience for the film, and he really wanted to make sure that those interested people saw it. He's also a mature filmmaker, so not very web savvy, but he really did want to kind of learn how some of the new marketing and distribution channels worked, and decided that he had kind of a bit of a time between developing his next project where he could devote some time to kind of working with me, and along the way he would kind of figure out in his head how some of these new things were working. But in working together, what we really wanted to do was to break even on all our efforts. So anything that we did, we didn't want to lose money on doing any of the marketing efforts. So we wanted to make sure that everything was sort of in a break-even situation. So perhaps what I can do now is just show you a bit of the trailer. So the film itself was, it was shot in Ecuador and also in Toronto and Vancouver.
That was on TV recently.
My sister just did that.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. There was actually there's been another documentary that was done on ayahuasca that aired on CBC. No, I think it was on Nature. Yeah. And that also had Dr. Gabor Mate in it, who you saw at the beginning, and it was focused more on his work with drug addicts in Vancouver. So, so with this one, as you can see, we really had a very, very identifiable core audience, and that core audience were people who had either participated in ceremony or might have been planning to participate in ceremony. As well, there were several niche audiences for the film, and those included a number of the people involved in the consciousness movement. Those are all those folks out in Vancouver. Also people involved in psychedelic research, of which there's quite a very strong community worldwide, and all those old hippies have not, they're not dead, they're just, hiding out in Southern California. As well, people who are, interested in spirituality. So we really knew who our audience was and where to focus our efforts. So we did have a DVD. We did have, the DVD had extras, and we did have a download version of the film. The download version of the film did not have sort of the extras. Those were sold through a Shopify store, which was integrated into the website. As well, we sold the DVD through a number of specialty retailers, and we have been selling the HD version on iTunes, and that would be both download to own and download to rent. And we are now into negotiations to, as well, stream the film.
So all of those places don't mind that you're in the other places, they're not?
No, because we own all the rights as well, and we own the rights in the States, we set all these up. And no, iTunes does not have exclusives, and with most of the, I would say, web video platforms, they're not looking for exclusive deals. And with Netflix as a filmmaker, you're going to get a flat fee anyways. So that's sort of, it's a little bit further down the list there, the streaming, because actually, even if you have quite a popular product, you could make less, right? With saying it. Not as yet, but that's one place that we're looking for. Often, a lot of these platforms, such as Netflix and Amazon, they don't want to deal with you as an individual, so you do have to go through usually a company that has a relationship with those platforms. So there is the company that we are dealing with and that we dealt with to get onto iTunes is one out of Toronto called Juice Distribution. And as well, there's numerous companies in the States who will also handle this sort of distribution for a fee. With iTunes, it does take time, and particularly, if you are experiencing doing any apps or doing anything for them, they literally go through everything line by line of the code. And they will go through, you have to have everything done exactly to their specifications as well for video. So for our marketing, we knew that there was a core audience, and we knew that those people were online. Their community was online. Ayahuasca kind of lives in a bit of a gray area. It's not illegal, although as it's starting to get known, it could be. So most people who are doing this, you wouldn't know unless you're kind of in the community itself. You wouldn't know where to get it, or how to participate, or you kind of need to know someone to go into it. So we did know that there were forums such as the ayahuasca.com where, we could go in and talk to people and let them know that the film was coming and then where it was screening. So I would say with this particular project, it was a bit more, I'd say more high touch than high tech, but we did have a very solid foundation to build on. And our focus, I would say, with this particular project was more on search, social media partnerships, and events. So I built a site for this myself using WordPress. It was very clean, well-designed website, and it's also a responsive website, which means that no matter what kind of a size screen, the whole website kind of morphs to fit exactly and perfectly. So if I wanted to go to Vine of the Soul and I'm on my mobile, it'll look perfect on a mobile. It'll size perfectly for the mobile and for the tablet. And if I'm on my huge big, 30-inch screen at home, it'll fill that up as well. So responsive sites are very new.
Did you say you did that on WordPress?
Yep.
So that must be new with WordPress, that you can morph those.
Yes, the responsive themes are fairly new, and they're still a little bit buggy, and for video, they're still not working as well as they could, but I'm really encouraging people to consider responsive websites simply because of the huge uptake in tablet use by people, and as well mobile, that you really want your site to be adaptable to kind of any type of screen size and not just, a big, huge hunk and flash site that can't be read anywhere else, right? So, although the filmmaker was, he's a very well-educated man and educated at Harvard and a very good writer, he really didn't like to blog, and he didn't get into it, and he still is not comfortable blogging. So within that context, we really put emphasis on the trailer and with links to additional video and audio and background materials. And if you do go to the site, you'll see we sort of built a little bit of an interactive page for the film itself that, kind of sorts, and the soundtrack will pop up and things like that. So there is a blog here, but that mostly he just put news of screenings up and a few things that he felt were of interest, or when I had time to, help him out and blog. We did some blogging, but that wasn't really the emphasis. So I don't know if you can see this, but we did get really, really excellent positions in the search engine result pages, both for the term Vine of the Soul and ayahuasca, and those were both terms that were both common and frequently searched pages. So we really wanted to make sure that we were right up high near the top for those terms. We knew a lot of people who were kind of interested or had heard word of mouth about the subject, or, as well might have seen the CBC show, would go and search us and would typically might land on our site before the CBC site and find out more about the film that way.
How did you position it that way?
What I did was I did a keyword search, so I kind of knew what people were looking for, and as well they were quite smart in terms of that they did have the domain vineofthesoul.com, and the sort of the ayahuasca does mean Vine of the Soul in English, so a lot of people would be searching for either ayahuasca or Vine of the Soul. So the website as well was very, very SEO friendly. I optimized all the pages, posts, I optimized all the images, Everything was optimized for search, again, and I use the WordPress SEO plugin by Use to do all of that, so I was able to optimize everything very quickly, and that allows me, as soon as I put new content up, to make sure that that content is optimized.
Sorry, for people who might not know what that means, optimize. Did you do a link with each of your images with keywords so that it would pick it up? WordPress?
No, usually when you're doing images, you just have to make sure that the keywords in the is in the alt, what's called the alt text. Yeah. So you have to do that, and then within again, what I'll do if we have enough time, I'll kind of go through some of the search stuff in a little bit more depth, just so you know some of the key things about that. So the other thing that we did was we optimized the YouTube channel and each of the videos that were posted within that channel for search. YouTube is also a search engine, and it is the second largest search engine on the web, and you do have to make sure that you are using keywords specific to YouTube, not the same ones with Google, so you have to do something a little bit different there. There's actually a tool on YouTube which will provide you with keywords. They're basically used for people who are advertising on YouTube. And it's called, I think it's just YouTube search. Yeah, blah, 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 yeah. So, or, a little quick, cheaty way to do it, what I often do is just go to YouTube Suggest. So now YouTube will sort of suggest a phrase, right, if you type a couple of words in. And I'll just take a look there, because if it's coming up in Suggest, then I know that a lot of people are probably searching for it. So, I'll kind of use that throw some of those terms in. So as you can see, we ended up with a number 1 position, and actually a couple of our other videos. There's one that's ended up in number 3 that had a number 4, I think, that had Richard in it. So far, we've had 30,000 views of the trailer, and I expect that will, keep increasing steadily. And the one thing that we did was we kind of used the full number of characters that YouTube allows, and that way we could put a very full description in, as well as the first thing I always did was the link back to the store. So if you, I'm pretty sure, so if you go, probably the first thing you'll see is the link to the store, and then the description of the video. So our primary channel for social media was Facebook. Again, Richard Meach, the filmmaker, he's felt the most comfortable there, and he kind of, understood, because he had a personal page of his own, and that he could manage it all on his own, and he did very, very, very well. He really built a very strong following. Anyone who left any kind of a comment, he always responded to them. He shared a lot of information from the community, so he shared other things that people were doing. It wasn't just exclusively focused on his film, and in fact, he didn't really talk about himself or the film very often. So it was more of a conversation of kind of, what was going on in the community, what was happening with some of the characters. We did start a Twitter account, and I did maintain that at first, and that was more to kind of find influencers within the specific community. It had ended up getting dropped because Richard was not comfortable with Twitter and couldn't maintain that. So it was also sort of heavily skewed towards people coming out of Brazil who spoke Portuguese, so for me it had a fairly high noise ratio, because for me to kind of get through a lot of the Portuguese tweets to kind of actually find people who were tweeting regularly in English, it was a bit of a chore. So we kind of worked just on Facebook, and that seemed to work very, very well for us. So on the publicity side, we were very lucky because Richard had written an op-ed piece in the Globe and Mail just in advance of the launch, and where he tied the Avatar, which was going into the Oscar nomination, and the whole tree and the whole connection of the Na'vi and their relationship with nature to exactly what was going on within the ayahuasca community, and how by drinking ayahuasca one felt the same connection with nature that the Na'vi did in Avatar. So this was a very nice, again, an op-ed piece, and as a result of that, we got picked up not only in the ayahuasca forums, and it got shared, but also by a lot of the people who were writing the Avatar forums, a lot of people who were talking about Avatar. We really did not focus on what I would call traditional media outlets, so I did not go to the Globe and Mail, for example, to seek a feature, or to the Toronto Star. I didn't spend any time kind of going to traditional media. Instead, we went to alternative publications, and specifically to a lot of online radio shows and podcasts, and to bloggers who were, writing about spirituality or health, or specifically ayahuasca, or within the consciousness community. We also had a second op-ed piece in the Globe and Mail, which was quite recently, when Dr. Mate and kind of Health Canada were kind of butting heads a little bit on ayahuasca, and it looked as if he was going to be forced to kind of stop using it to treat heroin addicts. So Richard did write another piece on that for the Globe, on why that probably wasn't a good idea in terms of a policy for Health Canada to do that. We did spend some money in advertising, and particularly on Facebook, to kind of help boost our membership at specific times, but it really was less than $1,000, and it was very, very highly targeted. So I knew I targeted only people who had used the term ayahuasca, and then by specific country. We also had a sponsorship package with a community site called Evolver, and again, I think that was probably in the $500 range, and we may go back in there again, and that included a banner and inclusion in their newsletter, and a bit of a social media push, and it was exactly our market, a lot of people there who were involved in the ayahuasca community, as well as people involved in spirituality, the 2012 movement, and lots of, alternative cultural types who, would obviously be interested in the film. Around the time of the broadcast, I also did a Stumble Upon, and I don't know if people are familiar with that. It's a little bit more expensive, but it did kind of really juice up my traffic. You can really get a really big bang out of doing Stumble Upon advertising over a couple of days. So what Stumble Upon does, if you've used Stumble Upon, you can stumble from sort of video to video or site to site, but what you as a user don't know is that some of those are paid sites. So for people searching within, say, spirituality or on a specific subject, they would accidentally stumble upon the Vine of the Soul site, and that was because I had paid for that to happen. So we did get a lot of traffic on that. With Stumble Upon, usually I just use it sometimes just to give it a little bit of boost. Its conversion rate is very bad, but you will get a nice bump in traffic for a day or two, and if you can tie that to a specific event, it may help a bit. We also partnered with some sites, and as well, I won't say specifically sites, but they're more online communities. And one was Hope Dance, and with them we did multiple screenings, community screenings in Southern California. And they sort of took care of a lot of the organization and marketing of that. And then we also partnered with Evolver, has what they call local communities or spores, and we partnered with many of the spores across the U.S. and Canada to do some small private screenings. So I'm just going to take 1 second because I'm going to show you kind of very quickly what we did in terms of community screenings, because it's a little bit interesting, I think.
Yeah. Hey, how are you? Good. Do you copy?
So what we did is we actually had
You. Is this Ian?
Richard Skype in after the screening.
How are you? I'm pretty good. Our camera went dark here.
So this way we could do really small groups, lots and lots of small groups. We didn't have to be there. He Skyped in, and it became then a very intimate event. And that way,
Escape from themselves. They can have a holiday from themselves and
and that way
themselves later.
he could see the audience, and the audience could see him, and then they could ask him some very direct and personal kind of questions.
And I find that that's one of the major differences between what happens to you internally with ayahuasca and these other substances.
So those were very successful, and it allowed us to do a lot of screenings in the U.S. and as well for smaller groups that otherwise we would not have been able to do, simply because the cost of flying to Omaha to screen the film for 40 people would have been atrocious, right?
So somebody in that city set up a little community screening?
Yeah,
and they
brought them
put
either
on
to their
TV?
house or to, rented a little hall and set the, yeah, we use typically the Evolver spores to do that.
So is that to get just higher profile, or is that a form of income, like?
That was a form of income for us. We always did very, very good sales after people came. So what we did was we charged a screening fee for each of the spores. So depending on their kind of financially, how they were, anywhere from say $50 to $150. So they were charged a screening fee. They received the film or the DVD. So either they downloaded the film or they were sent the DVD with the extras, and they could then screen it. And with that, they got the Q&A as well, live Q&A afterwards with Richard.
But it wasn't $50 per person, it was $50 for the one screening, so you could have exit, like 100
They
people.
could charge
They would
nothing, or they could charge $10 each. Usually, they would charge $5 or $10 each, and they would make, we just wanted to make sure that they could make a little bit of money as well. The screening fee was just more there to ensure that, we had a commitment from them, right? Because usually, if you have to pay, you're going to do it, right? Because we always had very good sales. It's like, doing the screening at a film festival. If you have your little desk set out front, right, you're going to do a good portion of sales. So we had also, initially at the start, Richard had submitted to kind of all the A-list film festivals and kind of taken that more traditional approach, but we didn't get into any of them. So our strategy then was to kind of relook at that and to target a lot of very niche film festivals. And an example of one was the Kos Film Festival, which took place in Greece. So doing some of those, he was able to kind of get out to other geographical areas and to, we always tried to do sort of little things around any festival screenings. And then we also did a small kind of non-theatrical tour out in BC. So on Vancouver Island, out on Salt Spring Island, there's a lot of, there's some really interesting communities out there. And as you can see here, Richard went out and, did some of these small theaters in person. So that was nice. And we did a bit of kind of alternative press stuff around that as well. We also did 2 major psychedelic conferences. I actually got to sit across from one of the head guys who was part of the whole LSD experiments from back in the 40s in Czechoslovakia, who had worked with the guy who actually mixed LSD, and I met the fellow who created ecstasy. They were all very nice. Old guys, though, very straight looking. This crowd is very, very unique. They're all scientists, and a lot of them are using psychedelics to, again, cure heroin addiction or for PTSD. It's proved to be very, very helpful as well in curing PTSD. So when we did go to these psychedelic conferences, we had a table, and we sold a lot of DVDs there. And then, as I mentioned, we did a large number of private screenings with the Evolver groups, and we sold product. So direct was one area as well where we've had a great deal of success. Richard had a couple hundred names, mostly of friends and people he knew, and we've now grown that list to over 2,000 names. We don't do necessarily a regular newsletter, but when we have kind of news and updates, we do send that out and don't try to overwhelm people too much. And we also try and include some community news in there. Every time we do send out a newsletter, we get sales. So some of the results of this is that we've sold just over 1,200 DVDs. Most of those have been individual sales, but some have been to specialty organizations such as MAPS, which is kind of the multidisciplinary psychedelic research something or other organization.
Do you charge more for PCR rights? A lot more.
Yeah. And also we have some specialty retailers, so some smaller bookstores, alternative bookstores, mainly out on the West Coast. Really our market is mostly California and BC, and then the Netherlands and Germany as well. Although Brazil's very big too. And Richard's doing more to kind of work on the wholesale side in the next coming months. We've also sold about 300 download-to-own copies via Fetch app, which is on our Shopify store. I don't have all the official sales from iTunes, but I think so far we've done 500 rentals and 130 downloads to own, and top 3 markets there being Canada, US, and Germany. So, because again the film was already, it had been paid for, most of the sales that we have done have been there to kind of offset costs on the marketing side, and it really, I think reached the objectives that Richard wanted to reach, and he's very happy. And he kind of, has had to, navigate through iTunes and various other new distribution platforms, so it's going to be a lot easier for him next time around when he, has his on the next project. So that's it. Any questions? Yes?
In terms of the DVDs, could you buy DVDs on his website as well?
Yes.
Okay, my second question would be, did he distribute those himself, or did he hire a company that would sort of package that and send it out?
He did that all himself. Yeah. I don't think, just given the volume, it wasn't, necessarily worthwhile to get a fulfillment company. I think if you're anticipating a large number of sales, but as well, what we've seen over the past year is that, the DVDs going this way, and the downloads and iTunes streaming is this way. So, we're sending fewer and fewer DVDs out.
So are these stats sort of over the past 12 months? Or-
Yeah, about a year and a little bit. Yeah. So it it hasn't been bad, and it certainly. His objective was not necessarily to make money, but it really was to ensure that the film received a wider audience, and rather than just the one time it aired on Vision. So.
Did you achieve that? Did you break even? Or did
Yes,
you-
we've always made money. So, whatever,
Including your service?
including my services and including, cost to build the website, which was very minimal. And I would say, as well, if you are building websites, you don't need to be spending more than $1,500 or $2,000 these days. Like, do not put a lot of money in websites. Usually I can do one on a weekend and, charge between $1,000 and $1,500. I build it all on WordPress, so unless it has to be highly customized and I have to bring in a programmer, it's you can really do them for cheap, and they look very, as you can see, it looks very, very nice. And when you get the PDF of this, you can, follow the link and actually have a little look and around it.
Did you have to wait till you had the rights back from the broadcaster? So was the project kind of cold for a year? Or
No,
were you able to start in conjunction with and then take over?
yeah, we actually started in advance of, because the broadcaster only had the online rights for Canada. So,
Actually start
so
in other markets first?
yeah,
While
so,
they still had the.
yeah. So.
Julie, just to let you know,
Mhm.
10 minutes.
Oh, okay. So hopefully I can get through case study 2. If not, we'll do it. Anyways, my next case study is on the web series Ruby Sky. It was 12 episodes. Each episode was 5 to 6 minutes long. Season 1, The Spy Scam, was funded by the IPF, and it was powered by a lot of sweat equity. It was there was a proprietary website, and the series was also on YouTube and on specialty distribution platforms. So really the goals here were to make a very high quality show, which was smart, and it had a focus on real kids. So, the kids looked like kids. They didn't look like Barbies. Exactly. And since Jill was kind of, along with Cheryl in the first year of the IPF, I think there was a lot of industry sentiment that, the web series meant crappy stuff. So there was a lot of effort put into really changing attitudes and showing that, high quality content could be produced and that web series could actually, be as good or better than television. Also part of this was to develop and kind of test an audience engagement strategy. I came in a little bit later on this project, kind of more as a consultant, so some of the stuff we had to kind of do a bit of fixing because the foundation was not as solid as I would have liked to have seen. I think with the audience engagement strategy it had to be tested because it was tweens and they can be very hard to reach. So really the audience, tween boys and girls, parents, classroom teachers, and then again part of that was just reaching peers in the broadcast and web, broadcast TV sort of web series industry. So distribution, there really wasn't monetization at that point. There was no monetization on the website, that meaning there were no ads or any way to kind of make money. YouTube, I think as well, just given the demographics, there was no advertising. However, we're now running on Blip and Coldcast, and I believe there is advertising revenue there. So there is some funds coming in through the specialty channels. So with the marketing with this project, the audience certainly was not quite as defined as you would see in case study number 1. I mean, I really knew who that target was and that they were online. This one was a little bit broader, and so I think that probably, and we are going into season 2, that we will benefit from a little bit more of a mixed strategy there where we're doing, and in fact, we are looking at more of a mixed strategy where we are bringing in kind of more, some advertising and more of an emphasis on publicity for season 2. The audience is very hard to reach, those tweens. I've worked on about 3 different tween projects now, and they are hard to reach, and often it requires going through intermediaries, and they can be hard to reach, like just trying to get to parents can be hard to reach. Definitely this project was skewed much more high touch, and as I mentioned, the foundation was not quite as solid as, say, with Vine of the Soul. Emphasis was on content, social media, publicity, and what I would refer to kind of more as outreach. So where the girls really did a fabulous, fantastic, case study worthy job was on the content side. And what they did was they pulled lots of topics and themes out of the story itself. So, for example, there was, I think in the first episode, there was a whole sequence about brownies. So from the beginning of the project right through, Jill every Friday put up a brownie recipe. Kids were invited to, submit their favorite brownie recipes. And then we also went out to a lot of food bloggers and asked them, who were, mums, many of them, to submit their favorite brownie recipes. So this was done over many, many topics. So the brownie topic was one. There was also the Coke Mentos stunt. There was a lot of blog posts done on email scams, how to prevent getting caught in one, what to look for, lots of guidance on that. We ran a whole plastic water bottle campaign. A plastic water bottle campaign was part of the dramatic series, and the younger sister was collecting money via plastic water bottle campaign. So again, that became a part of the content, why plastic bottles are bad and how to, prevent this and that. So, and as well, rock, paper, scissors was part of the concept. The game was part of the series, and also became a game on the site and was talked about quite frequently in blog posts. So they did a fantastic job with content. They had a 7-day-a-week publishing schedule, and that was over several months. So that was a large number of pages, which were indexed by the search engines. And the more pages you have, statistically, that will increase your chances of your website being found by somebody somewhere at some time. It also meant there were a large number of shareable links, all leading back to the website. So every day, you could be pretty much guaranteed that when a tweet went out or when something was shared on Facebook, it would all be pointing back to the website because that's where the unique content was. So they did a great job with that. Having kind of a rich content offered lots of opportunities for engagement and feedback. So not only were kids contributing comments, but they were also asked to contribute artwork and recipes. Around the content, as I mentioned, there were also opportunities for outreach with bloggers contributing recipes. And so there was a reason for the kids to kind of come back to the site because they always knew that there would be something new up there, and if they came back, they might find something new and unique. So I don't know if you can see this, but this was actually the 7-day schedule. So as you can see, 3 times a day when there was either a blog post, there was, it is very detailed. So when you do really take a look at this and see how they've scheduled it, I think it's a wonderful template, but it also gives you an idea of the amount of work involved and the amount of time. So, very luckily we had 2 writers. Giles, a fast, very good writer, Karen Walton, fast writer. So, much more than me. I kind of have to labor a bit over my blog post, so it takes me longer, but they were able to get stuff up very quickly, and it was very well written and engaging and amusing. So, but very well worth looking at this calendar. And again, you can see, Fridays was brownie days. So, and it was all planned out month by month, and I would again, if you are kind of planning anything, do this. Do not miss this step, because the first thing that's going to drop as soon as you get busy is your content. So having it all set down and knowing exactly when things are going to appear and what's going to appear, and then you can hold people to it. And it's like running a magazine or a newspaper. You have to push it out. And the only way to do that is to be schedule it and to be very, very, very consistent about when things are printing.
But is that more important with webisodes than, say, a one-off documentary?
In that case, perhaps yes. Although I do know, many documentarians, and I think it just depends on the person and what they're most comfortable with. If I was Richard, I would have been blogging at least 3 times a week, but he kind of wasn't comfortable, or I would have had like a picture a day, or I would have been much more over that. And I think for filmmakers too, there's some of them have, really do very extensive content plans, sort of similar to this.
How long did Jill keep this process up about a month?
Oh, at least.
She did what, 12 episodes?
Yes.
Were they weekly going up?
They were weekly. So, and this was at least a couple months before, and probably a couple on the backhand. So I would think at least 6 months they were doing a 7-day-a-week schedule. Yeah. So it was a lot of work. So the website that was developed was actually not very SEO friendly. Personally, I would not have chosen Ruby Sky as the name of the project. To me, it was a weak online brand name. There was a San Francisco nightclub called Ruby Sky, and it really owns all the Google juice. So
Ruby Sky PI?
It is Ruby Sky PI, but people were searching for Ruby Sky, and if they're searching for Ruby Sky, they're going to end up on the nightclub. And they just owned, for the pages, so it's very hard to compete against. So just a little thing to keep in mind when you are thinking of titles is how it's going to work digitally. A lot of the posts and pages weren't optimized on the site. Her video wasn't optimized. So I did use a tool called SEO Moz to kind of crawl the site and find a lot of the errors. There were a lot of drop pages and a lot of what are called 404 pages, like posts that, just because there was so much content on that site, they'd done some posts and then kind of published them, forgot where they were, and the navigation structure wasn't very good, so there were all kinds of lost pages. And so we tried to fix as many of those red flag problems as we could. And we also fixed permalink structure, and I'd like to tell you about that, but I think I better keep going, and then maybe I can tell you after we're finished. I installed an SEO plugin, and then I took all her video and I moved it, all her video all her videos, all her episodes, I moved them to YouTube and I optimized them all.
And where were they before?
She had them on Vimeo.
And that was our issue too.
Yeah.
That we thought it looked better on Vimeo.
Yeah.
You convinced
Exactly.
us to go to
Yeah.
YouTube because that's where people
Because
go.
you can search it.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a big decision for us. That was
Yeah.
hard,
But
but you
did
were
you keep it
right.
up in both? You took it off of Vimeo, even though, because I've got mine on both, but.
Yeah, I mean, you can keep it on Vimeo. I mean, you have to understand the Vimeo community. If you're in the advertising industry, and I've worked a lot in advertising, animation and motion graphics people, worked heavily in the motion graphics industry. Fabulous place to be because that's who's there. Okay? That's not your audience or who you're talking to. You're not going to find any kids there at all. Filmmaker community's there, the animation community's there. So, if you're producing animation and you want the industry to see it, the first place it should be is on Vimeo. But if you're looking for, a broader general audience, you really need to be on YouTube.
Can you talk a bit about how you optimize it? You said you moved into YouTube and you optimize it. What do you mean you do?
I will. Could we kind of meet up during break to do that? Or it's just, there's only one more thing I want to kind of cover here before I have to let everybody go, if I can, because this is the other important thing. So on the social media side, there are anywhere from 4 to 6 people responsible for social media. So each person was given a character profile that defined who they were and which gave them an online voice. So everybody was given the same way you would like a character outline, except it was for them so they knew how to talk on Twitter and on Facebook, and then everyone had different things that they were talking about.
So the voice for Ruby Sky was not the actor who did Ruby Sky? It was an adult doing it?
No, what I meant by that was that of the 6 people that were tweeting or posting to Facebook, what Karen did was say, Jill Golick, this is what you're like online, this is your character online, and this is what you're going to talk about online. Doris, this is your character online, this is who you are online, and this is what you're going to talk about. So that way everyone kind of had a distinctive profile so that they weren't kind of grasping at straws about what they were going to talk about. They each were very defined in terms of, what their sort of voice was.
But just to be clear, so it was the actors who followed through online, but this.
None of the actors were online, just producers and yeah. So, and Jill and Karen were on Twitter from the first day of production. They held all their production meetings via Twitter. They told people everything that they were doing. It was extremely industry-facing, and really they created a whole story about the production. So, and then when the series launched, the tweets then became more audience-facing. And, this was a very different example where the producers felt very, very comfortable on Twitter, and it really fitted their style of communication, so that was their main channel.
Was the Twitter audience the viewers, the teens and tweens?
No.
No.
So I think it was, it was mainly, again, with that goal of kind of, you know, Jill really wanted to kind of change the sensibility around what web series were and how it was perceived, because really, you know, the general impression was is that, you know, they were cheaply done and inferior writing and, you know, just generally bad, right? So I think that was, you know, she spent a lot of time with the industry to kind of
Prove
change.
her point, yeah.
As head of the Writers Guild of Canada,
Yeah.
she should. Yeah, thank you.
And then Geek Dad, we had a big piece in Geek Dad on Wired, and that was our hockey stick, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.